which means in a couple hours I'll be running the most amazing game ever of Hyperborea. At least, I hope the players think so. And at any minute, my wife will be home from the grocery store, and I'll have to turn the camera off and go help her carry groceries in, which shouldn't take more than a couple minutes. So I'm just warning anybody that ends up tuning in. Uh, in other news, Bruce has got a group of bros and cuties over there in his game. And, if it's not too big of a deal, it'd be awful cool if people could go over there and at least give it a thumbs up. Bruce is a good guy. He works hard to try and put on a good show. And, plus he's just a straight up bro. As I used to say, Bruce is a mensch for sure. He's a mensch. So let's not go, show him some love, right? So right now, I brought in one of those like little shelves with the drawers to store my vehicles in until I get them painted. But I am pleased to say that yes, I still have these Rommel Pattons unpainted, and I found my four Maxims, and they scale pretty much dead on with the new stuff, really, which makes sense since the old Ralph Partha stuff. There was no telling what scale they were made in at all. So because apparently the new thing is to mount vehicles on hexes. I don't know why. That's what I'm gonna have to do. Because in the old days, when I was a whippersnapper, I don't remember anyone mounting vehicles on hexes. You just put the vehicle on the table, and you knew which way it was facing, just because. And since a lot of vehicles have like what's it called, turrets, it's not, it's like they can be facing any direction and firing in any direction. So, oh, there is got a couple of. Oh, yeah, it's such a sweetie. I do what I can to help bros and to show appreciation for hard work. That was one thing. As poor as I was growing up, my family always taught me that if you work hard, you should be rewarded in some way, right? And it stuck with me. So now, it's kind of ingrained when I see people that are buddies of mine and they're working hard and doing their thing. Of course, I support them however I can. So when people wonder, like, damn, James gave Double D, like $20 or whatever in a super chat. That is just my way of letting someone know. I already warned everyone on the chat that I might have to take off. That is my way of just letting that channel know that, hey, I see you guys, man, and you're doing a good job, and I like it, and keep doing it. I told you you don't. Well, I didn't tell you, but we all know you don't go to the store hungry. Yep. Anyway, guys, give me 5 minutes. I love you, baby. She went hog wild buying me presents, like a bunch of sausages, meat snacks, because I mean, that's basically when I have a choice, all I eat is meat and greens. So she brought me like 4 cans, collards, and mixed greens. I'm happy about that. Now, this is supposed to be a Moscow Mule. However, people can't just do anything freaking normal in life. So it's a Moscow Mule, but it's got cucumber and lemongrass in it. And my sister in law bought it thinking, it'd be good. And then decided to leave the whole box here for me to try because she knows I actually love Moscow Mule. When I do order an alcoholic drink when I'm out, which is not often, that's a lot of times what I'll order: a Moscow Mule or double Moscow, mule. Bowden's Forge, man, been a while. And there's Steve and Kenny. What is up? Oi, oi, oi. Ziggy zaggy, ziggy zaggy. Oi, oi, oi. So I'm going to give this thing a taste. But honestly, it's one of those deals where it's like, again, my grognardy ass, it's not just about games. It turns out it's about drinks too, because I'm sitting here thinking, what asshole decided, let's make a Moscow Mule and then throw cucumber and lemongrass in it? It's like, who thought that was a good idea? You know, you're talking about a classic drink served in your frozen copper mugs, and you're just throwing weird shit in. I mean, sometimes I hate to say this, and maybe it's because I'm a traditionalist, like deep down to the core of my bones. But sometimes I think that creativity isn't the best thing ever. You know what I mean? Yeah. Happy, happy, joy, joy. Sometimes I think maybe calm down with the creativity. If something's worked for like 1,000 years, maybe just let it work, leave it alone. Anyway, here's my taste. Oh my God, it tastes like a California roll somehow. I mean, I get the ginger beer, I get the vodka, I get the citrus, and then the final taste is like cucumber. It literally tastes very similar to a California roll. Gee. I mean, it's not bad. I'll drink it, but yeah, that's fun. Janet's be a good time, but yeah, I almost would rather just drink vodka, and I've got a fridge full of ginger beer. So I'm sitting here being like, yeah, somebody thought that was a good idea. I don't know why. I need to get some stuff primed and painted ASAP. Because if I can get it primed and painted really quick, I can actually use it in the game tonight. So let's go ahead and do that. And I think I already showed you guys the funnel web spiders I got. Because, I've got tons of giant spiders, but when I saw the funnel web in attack position, I was like, oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love ginger beer, and there was a time in the not so far long ago when I made probably 12 pack of ginger beer every week. I've got the big gallon glass with the bubbler and the whole 9 yards. And making ginger beer is probably the easiest thing in the world. You know, the only thing difficult about it is when you siphon it out of the container you fermented it in, try not to suck up all the dead yeast laying at the bottom into the bottle. So, you know, and I had bottles that I would run through the washer and make sure they're sterile, and then fill them up with the ginger beer, put the caps on them. And yeah, you know, they're like $4 for that big ass spider, $4.95. And I love that attack pose, how it's up like, and the big ass fangs. That is definitely an Australian funnel web, which, like I said, we have those here in America, but they're not as big, and you don't hear people talking about them so much, I guess. But if the legends are true, the Australian funnel webs, the big ones, can bite right through your sneakers, man. Go right through. I mean, if you're wearing like a pair of like, I sometimes wear my Adidas track shoes, and apparently a funnel web does not give a shit about your Adidas track shoes. It'll just snap right through them, and then you will be hurting for a very long time. The only big spider I've ever seen in person was a rose-haired tarantula, and it was sweet, you know. I mean, okay, that's a weird thing to say because it's a spider, so God only knows what its emotional state was. But the whole time I held it, you know, it was super calm and it didn't bite me, you know, so there's that. I mean, and the guy whose pet it was, yeah, he told me, he assured me, he's like, rose-haired tarantulas, which are apparently from Mexico or something, are like not aggressive. Yeah, like the only way they're going to bite you is if you hurt them. No, funnel webs, I don't believe, are deadly unless you're one of those super fortunate people that's born with an allergy, in which case you could just be effed. But that's true of everything. Yeah, Shelob, exactly. But they've never done a Shelob right, because if you read the description of Shelob, she has like fingers at the end of her legs, and her head is actually, there's a neck between the head and the abdomen. Um, because there goes my Roomba. I swear it sounds like one of those old jet fighters um, winding up to take off, you know, like an F-86 or a MiG-17. Um, yeah, because the thing people don't a lot of times realize about Tolkien is Shelob and the spiders in Mirkwood and wherever else they may have been found were not natural creatures. They were demons. And that comes from Ungoliant, which was a demon from the Outer Dark. And Shelob was Ungoliant's daughter. And then the talking spiders in Mirkwood, yeah, A10. I love A10s. It's one of my favorite planes that ever got invented. So all of the spiders in Mirkwood, the ones that could talk were the ones that were closest related to Shelob. But as the generations went down, they eventually just become normal spiders. And that's the same thing with the vampires that lived in Angmar, the werewolf that lived in the mountains of Mirkwood, and his kin. They were all things where Melkor had brought evil spirits from the Outer Dark to Middle Earth, and they had taken forms of things on Middle Earth. So the werewolves looked like giant freaking wolves, and the wargs were descendant of werewolves. So, I mean, I don't, in most fantasy games, I don't know if how people play their wargs, but uh, technically, if you're trying to go for the Tolkien thing, wargs are as smart as goblins. And goblins do not keep wargs as mounts. The wargs volunteer. Specifically because since the goblins are always causing trouble and shit, the wargs want to be in on it. So they volunteer to let goblins ride them so they can go raiding and being assholes because they're evil and that's what they want to do. But then over enough time, they just will become wolves, you know, as the generations go. The further away they get from that original demon. Um, so, yeah. And of course, there's like 5 stories for the creation of the orcs. Some people like the whole they were elves that got all effed up, and some people like they were created, from men or whatever. I mean, really, it's whatever. Yeah, I was over watching Bruce's game. It looked really good today. I mean, not that it has ever not looked good, but they look like they're having a lot of fun, And I was just like, man, you know, one of these days, Bruce, I'm just gonna show up and be like, hey, I'm gonna quote him some freaking Nirvana. I'm just gonna show up and be like, here I am now, entertain me. And waiting for Timmy, see if he shows up. He might have a game tonight though, like I do. One thing I can say is I had the cassette of Bleach by Nirvana when I was in Iraq. So I actually had listened to Nirvana long before Teen Spirit came out. And I thought they were okay. They're okay. They're pretty good. I think the song I listened to the most was Polly. Polly wants a cracker. She says I should get off her first. Not 100% sure what's going on in there, but apparently somebody's got somebody like chained in a basement. And I know a lot of people will be like, boo, you suck. Honestly, I like the Foo Fighters better. So I've got 4 carnivorous apes that I need to get painted, which means what I'm doing right now, I need to not be doing. I need to not be digging around through here looking for anything because the primer is literally in front of me and I'm wasting time. So let's get it together, James. Yeah. One day they're going to be our masters. So, yeah, I watched a thing the other day where Dave Grohl talks about the last couple months that Kurt Cobain was alive. And Dave Grohl said he basically had Kurt Cobain had basically cut Dave Grohl right out of his life. I do have an airbrush, but you know what? I never use it. And right now it's sitting out on the shelf on my porch with my 3D printer farm, which I haven't used in months either, because, I'm a terrible human being, I guess, really. Because, yeah, I just get stuff and then use it. And see, at our old house, I had a different game room that was bigger and everything. And I had a big table in the game room. We played in the game room instead of at the kitchen table. And I had my airbrush in the house. But in this house, it's out in the garage. And the garage is not air conditioned. So anytime I go out to do work in the garage in Florida, whatever the temperature is outdoors, it's 20 degrees hotter in the freaking garage. And that becomes, a pain quick. I see something fly by. I hate having anything flying in the house. So, yeah. So that's basically what's up there. Let's see. I need to finish these. I'm prioritizing. I need to get my harpies done for sure. So we'll put them there. But the main priority is got to be these apes. That's the main priority. So we'll put these things off to the side. Everything's based and washed and ready to go. So I got that all done last night when you may have been here. We were up to like 3 something. Janet dropped in. We were just talking about all kinds of things and having a good time. It was a lot of fun. Okay, that's a Bulldog vehicle. I like the way you kiss me. I can tell you miss me. I can tell it hits. I want to be romantic. I'll hit it from the back just so you don't get attached. I like the way you kiss me. I can tell you miss me. I can tell it hits. Yeah, can't turn you in. Yeah, can't make you see. Yeah, I'm proud of you. Dun. See, these miniatures from Reaper, I'm thinking they're 3D printed because they have supports on them. And I don't remember Reaper miniatures ever having like supports like this on them. And having been a 3D printer in resin, like I recognize it. Now that's something funny, guys. Is apparently the way they sculpted the apes, their butts are completely smooth. So I mean, I don't know. That might be fun to paint their butts like a mandrill. Give them all like super colorful butts, blue and red or something. I mean, that might make them a little bit less scary. You got this big ape trying to eat you, but it's got like, super colorful behind. That's a strange thing, but so apparently there was some red paint dried at the bottom of the container I put my Vallejo primer in. And now the Vallejo primer is turning a little bit pink. Personally, it will not matter. I'll paint these bad boys up with my Army Sweet paints, and the fact that they're slightly pink instead of white will not even matter. So now I'm wondering what color I should even go with these guys. I'm thinking like a really pale gray. Yeah, beware of the blue butt apes. Yeah, I'm thinking a pale gray since they're, in theory, in D&D, carnivorous apes live in caves. So, but tonight we are going to see, we're starting around 7, and we will play until probably 11. Unless, everybody's awake and functional, and then we'll go until maybe 12 or so. I play it by ear, like I said, because some of the guys at the table work construction. And I know how tired it is, working out there. It just takes it out of you. So, but if the game is really at a really exciting part, I mean, those guys will be like, no, let's keep going. Yep. I need to, one of these days, get my photo album out. I've got some pictures of an A10 circling over my position that I took from, with just a Kodak camera, from on top of the Bradley. Like I climbed up on the back deck of the Bradley and I took pictures of this A10 that was circling, and it was so low you can see it's an A10. You know what I mean? I mean, it was just, and it's so weird because, hey, Mobius, what's up, brother? Because A10s, they look like they're going really slow. but you know they're doing like 350, 400 miles an hour. But when you sit and watch them, they're just. I remember one time we were all taking turns getting into the turret of the Bradley and using the magnification on the targeting reticle to watch B-52s heading north. And there'd be like 3 or 4 of them at a time, just all in formation. And with the naked eye, all you could see is like the jet stream or whatever they call it, the contrails. But when we got in the Bradley and actually looked up through the reticle of the main gun, you could actually see them, up there, just the wheel of death. Is that what they call the A-10? I mean, it's amazing design. Supposedly, they've got another design that's supposed to be even better than the A-10, but I haven't seen it. And I mean, the A-10 came out, in the 80s? And they keep cottonballing it and saying, yeah, we're not going, Oh, they call it okay. They keep being like, okay, the A-10's out of service. We're just going to send it, to reserve units or some shit. And then as soon as an armed engagement happens, those A-10s come right back. So, but they are amazing aircraft. So like, if they fire the main gun too long, it'll cause the jet to actually stall. So they got to be careful with that big gun. And the pilot is sitting in like this super hard titanium alloy bathtub, basically, that wraps around the pilot seat. Bruce, I just was telling people you're running your game. Oh no, Janet sent me a thing, and like I say, I like to reward people who are doing a good job, especially when I like them. But and you do a good job. You run your game. All of your players are having a good time. You've always been a bro to me, even when people were talking shit about me or whatever. So, I mean, I got your back, bro. Plus, you're ex-military, kind of. I mean, Navy, but still. I'm over here painting these ferocious killer apes, and I still need to do detail on the Gorlons, I think is what they're called. The 4-armed apes. Yeah, I need to do some detail work on those bad boys, because a couple of them are actually wearing equipment, because I guess some of them are smart enough to wear equipment and make equipment. Jack Black, you're 100% correct. The M2, or as we in the Army call it, Ma Deuce, 50 caliber, was built like in World War I. So think like 19 and teens, like 1915 or 19 something. I don't know the exact date offhand. And that bad boy is never going away, because the guys that made that thing 100 years ago, they couldn't make it any better. That's just, I mean, the only way you could possibly improve the M250 cow, it would have to be material advancement. Like, if we come up with some alloys to make it lighter or something. But I mean, when it comes to mechanical design, that is peak of heavy machine gun right there. Oh, seventh group. Nice. That's that's way above my. I was in the 7th, but it was the 3rd of the 7th Infantry Regiment. 3-7 Infantry, Cotton Bellers by God. According to our lore, we were the ones that fought the British in New Orleans under good old Andy Jackson. But yeah, what I'm talking about, I was actually in Iraq, and I was sitting on the top of the Bradley, and I just saw him circling, and I took a picture. you know, because they were looking for something, you know. That's what they were doing. They were just circling around, seeing what they could see. And then at nighttime, the Apaches would come in, and we could see the tracers from that Apache's main gun miles away. So it's like, you know, you're sitting there because I was dismount machine gunner, and you're sitting there and you just see like those glowing freaking tracers coming out of nowhere, and you know someone on the other end of that just had the worst day of their life, probably. The Apache helicopter scared the Iraqi recruits, the conscripts, so much that when we captured them and we kept them, you know, until like military police could come and get them and take them to like a POW area, because we weren't prepared for that. That wasn't our job. Every time you would hear a helicopter going over, some of those crazy guys would like drop to the ground and start throwing sand on their backs, like they thought they were going to hide. Now, look into this. I don't know how true it is now, but when I was in the Chinook helicopter, that big goofy looking double prop thing, when I was in, that was the fastest helicopter in service. And they could stick like 30 dudes in the back of that thing. So basically, you know, a whole platoon plus. And so that's why in the hardcore Army commercials where you see like a bunch of rednecks jumping out of a Chinook into a lake or something, that's why you see that Chinook, because they are fast and they can carry. I've seen Chinooks carry like 75 and 150 artillery pieces, Humvees, like not any armor really, but 442 in World War II. 442 is that the Japanese unit? I don't know. I get mixed up. What do they call them? The Devils or something? Devil Brigade or something? Or was that the there? I think there was an all black unit too that was like over there that did not the Tuskegee Airmen, but there was an actual all black infantry regiment, and they did a lot of fighting under what's his name, the troublemaker, in Italy. Yeah, they did a lot of stuff in Italy. So my wife's in there watching this story about like politics amongst werewolf tribes uh, on YouTube. It's like, I don't know if it's AI or what it is, but I've watched a couple of them, and the first thing I thought is, wouldn't it be kind of cool setting for a D&D game that was like medieval, and you could play a werewolf? And I mean, more like a white wolf werewolf than the traditional werewolf, but like all of the nobility and the ruling classes and everything of these kingdoms are werewolves, and they're all ranked between alphas and omegas. I think I mean, some people might not like that idea for a fantasy game, but I think it'd be kind of neat actually. So 442, you said yes. So either they were Japanese or they were black, African. I don't even, not African. They're Americans. God darn it. I'm tired of the prefixes. I call myself an American. I don't say, oh, I'm German American. I mean, I'm tired of that shit. Most of the dudes I know that aren't white are tired of that shit. That's just some shit to keep people like against each other, you know? Everyone that's born in the United States, regardless of any particulars, is an American. Unless their parents are illegals, in which case they're whatever their parents are. In theory, we'll see. But yeah, man, get these apes done up. The party may encounter them because they're getting ready to go down a whole different part of the dungeon. And some of you guys, I hope you don't like disrespect me too much about this, or I should say, lose too much respect for me about this. But that's a fact. Um, a lot of times when I'm running dungeons, I don't pre-make them. You know what I mean? I just kind of go with it. It's kind of like that meme where it's like you see the guy and he looks like his brain's caved in and is like doesn't plan, just wings it. And then it goes up and you see like the Jedi and it's like plans or whatever. And then it goes down and you see the master and it says doesn't plan, because it's like some of the best games, according to my players, not me, my players, I've ever run, I made up on the spot. Just, you know. And speaking of D&D, I am not afraid to rip off literally any good idea from anything. Let's not call it ripping off. Let's call it sampling or borrowing, being inspired. So, yeah, one time I got my players to play a sci-fi game, which is basically Star Frontiers. I ran the second or third Riddick movie, the one where when it rained, um, the creatures come up out of the ground and start killing everybody. Yeah, I ran that whole thing almost scene for scene, and the players never knew, or if they did know, they didn't care because they were having a good time, you know. They were running around. They were trying to get the radio operating so they could call. Um, see, Saxius, who is a homie, I think, Saxius, I would consider a homeboy. He's like that. Everything is planned, and he is amazing. Me, I'll plan stuff, but you know what happens when I do plan stuff? They always do something to make whatever I planned completely null and void. Like okay, weeks ago, they were journeying from the Swamp Gate, which is a town across the continent to Zimbabwe. So that was a good, like, maybe a month's travel. So I pre-set up every encounter. I rolled for everything. I wrote everything down. And as soon as we started playing, they ditched their mammoth in a town and bought a ticket on a boat and got there in like a week and a half. So I was like, well, I'm so glad I spent all that time planning, you know, what was going on, because you guys just basically nope. And that has happened before with me too. One time I mapped out a whole dwarf hole, like multiple levels. It had freaking gray dwarves in it and hobgoblins, all kinds of monsters everywhere, cool tricks and traps. And yeah, they got to the front gate and the wizard sent the wizard eye in and saw 10 hobgoblins marching around on patrol. And they immediately convinced themselves to just go back to the city. And I was just sitting there like, I mean, I'm going to let them do it because I don't railroad, but so part of me is kind of wary of over planning because I play a game with a bunch of people who at the drop of the hat could immediately decide they're going to go chase a squirrel. And everything I wrote immediately just becomes nothing. And yeah. And I've been bitten in the ass by that freaking spider a number of times. So, I mean, I'm not bitter, except I kind of am, but I mean, the players are going to do what the players want to do. And there is nothing you can do about it, unless, like I said, you want to be one of those guys that railroads your players and forces them to do stuff. That might have been me when I was in my mid-teens. I might have been a little bit railroady back then because, in the mid 80s, all we knew was dungeon crawls. And fortunately, everyone I played with, that's all they wanted to do was dungeon crawls. But then when I got a bit older, all of a sudden it was like, I want to go to town and, pick fights and get to know the governor. And then the game just evolved a lot from there. See, nowadays, because of the internet, which I think is awesome, I don't think people go through that whole that phase. Because, like, let's say 1983, 84, the game really consisted of you wake up and leave the town, walk through the woods to the dungeon, go in the dungeon, and then you describe whatever they see in the dungeon, and then you say, okay, what do you do? And that was kind of like every game, basically. You wake up at the tavern, and then you go to the dungeon. And then later, as a DM, especially after playing Isle of Dread, it become a thing where, well, that area between the dungeon and the town, like what's there? I mean, B2 helped, but the B2, which I base a lot of my everything on, that's the adventure I actually learned to play the game with. It kind of helped. You had a couple of outdoor adventures and stuff, but honestly, when you're playing with a bunch of hyped up Mountain Dew drinking teenagers, they don't really want to deal with a lot of that shit. A lot of times, they want to get straight to murdering orcs. And nowadays, people talk like that's such a horrible thing, but I will defend it. When people are like, "Oh, they're just filthy murder hobos," and I'm like, well, are they having fun though? Like, as a group of players, are they having a good time? Because if they're having a good time, let it ride, baby. It's not my business. See, I mean, I just happen to be the DM for a group of people who are kind of deep role players. They really want to, and I think that could be because that's the ladies really that want to really get deep into the lore and everything. I think some of the dudes, if I just left it up to them, they would 100% be murder hobos. So, but like I said, I have no judgments on it. As a matter of fact, I think I would go so far to say is there really is no wrong way to play a role-playing game. I mean, there's ways I would never play, but if it works at your table, then who am I to say anything about it? Yeah, I can't get over the cucumber. Vodka and cucumber. Who thought that would be good? Ugh. All right, let's go ahead and use up this primer while it's out. I hate to use or to waste paint, so a lot of times when I'm painting something, a color, when I'm done with whatever I'm painting, if I have anything else on the desk that needs painting, a lot of times I'll just use that paint on that miniature. One thing I have to do to myself is remind myself not to just paint everything choke up. Hey, Privyet. It's been a long time. How are you? Yeah. Hey, Placebo for dropping in, man. And I can also say, Davai. Let's go. But my ability to speak Rus is Chocho. I drink that tastes like a Cali roll. Yeah, a drink that kind of tastes like a California roll. It's just like strange. And I like California rolls, but a Moscow Mule should not taste like a California roll. I mean, and again, I'm a traditionist. I like my Moscow Mule served in a frozen copper mug, and I like it to be vodka, ginger beer, and maybe a twist of lemon or lime or whatever, something like that. You know, some people might put a little mint in there, and that's okay. Okay, I can deal with a little mint too. But lemongrass and cucumber, that's like that's like a weird fusion thing because lemongrass is used in a lot of Vietnamese and Thai food. So I doubt anyone who lives in Eastern Europe probably cooks with a lot of lemongrass. And the cucumber is weird. And what makes it kind of weird is that I actually like cucumber water. Me and the missus are good. It's we got the game in a couple hours tonight. She's fixing a taco casserole thing so that when the players get here, they can eat if they want. And it's 64 Freedom units here in Orlando, which is, believe it or not, very nice for Orlando this time of the year. Um, Personally, I wish I was up in the snow because I am a hot-blooded person who I can sit in 60 degrees and sweat. You know what I mean? It's like, to me, the colder it is, the better. But unfortunately, until the wife retires, I am destined to be down here. And Cold Iron Skillet's been making me some really cool thumbnails for my videos. All of his recent ones have been me as a House Merrick battle mech pilot, which I love. And sometimes we see Shadow, but he's been so busy. So I've started actually joining his channel at like noon Eastern and BSing around with him over there. Unfortunately, he doesn't do a show on weekends in the morning. So when I woke up this morning and then the time came and I went to find the show, I couldn't find it. And then I sent him a message. I'm like, dude, where's the show? And he's like, oh, I don't do it on Saturday. I was like, oh, all right. But one thing that has happened is like a lot of the people I hang out with, like Timmy plays in 7 or 8 games. Letholdus. Shadow plays in like 5 or 6 games, It's like all of these dudes are in so many games, either with Bubba or DM Bloodworth or whomever they're in with. Bruce is running a game right now. And Bruce's Saturday game a lot of times will go 10 plus hours. For sure, And I think he's using his homebrew rules today. It sounded like he was. Because he decided to stop playing basically Pathfinder and just start running like a homebrew game, which I think that's cool. Now, I mean, if I could convince Bruce of anything, it would be to pick up the Hyperborea role-playing game and just play that. He could make like a Cossack Cataphracti or a Byzantine Cataphracti, a Persian Cataphracti. Cataphracti being the class, which is just a guy who fights from the back of a very heavy horse. And it's a subclass of the fighter. And what kind of sets it apart is you have to start with weapon mastery with a lance. And but you do get to choose another weapon, so you're not useless. 4C. Yep, I don't even know what that is in Freedom units. Well, 0 is 0. So force C, because I think 0 Celsius and 0 Fahrenheit are the same. So force C is, God, I don't even know. I don't know. I don't even understand why anyone in the world accepted the metric system. It just seems stupid to me. But everyone did except for us, and I think Liberia, maybe Malaysia or somewhere. So around 40 degrees, I would love that. When I go to Kentucky and it's like 40 degrees, that's when I grab my AK and go wander up to the hill, you know, walk around my property, see what I see. I mean, I do have my AR 300 Blackout, but I still prefer the Bulgarian AK 74N. The only thing I worry about is with the way they're doing ammo and shit is that one day you won't be able to get the 545 by 39 as cheap and easy as you can now, you know. But to be fair, I did kind of stock up. I bought like 3 spam cans from I think they're from Romania, and each one of those has like 1,400 something rounds in it. So I mean, that's enough for me for what I do, which is just go out in Kentucky on my property. We have a range, and perfectly legal and everything. So whenever I'm filling away, I can just go walk over to the range, you know, and fire a few rounds. If you've ever watched that one guy, what was his name? That would stand just across the road from his property and shoot steel targets. It's kind of like that, except I don't film it. But yeah, that's pretty much what I do. Go out and plink a few rounds. I mean, when I'm serious about actually taking something down, I don't bring the AK for that. Like during deer season, I used to use a I spent a while using a Mosin Nagant uh, because I bought it for $100. You know, it's like, and it hits like a 30-06. I mean, that thing will. And then I got a Mauser K98 from Serbia, and I used that thing. And let me tell you, the ammo is expensive, but that thing was so accurate. It was like a sniper rifle, even iron sights. There goes the Roomba again. And then I finally upgraded to a Remington 700 with an optic, and that's 30-06, which means I pay about $2 a bullet. You know, $2 every time I squeeze the trigger, but it like I could probably take my AK in Florida to hunt deer because the deer down here are just these tiny little swamp deer. They're barely 100 pounds. But up in Kentucky, they got like real deer up there. And the last thing you want to do is shoot them with some small round that'll just wound them but won't actually drop them. Because then you either got to track their blood to find them. And if you don't find them, then they're suffering. And the last thing any actual real hunter wants is for whatever we're hunting to suffer. I mean, the real goal when you hunt deer, because I love venison, you know, keep a freezer of it up there. Um, the goal is that the animal not suffer at all, and that's why you try to hit it right, like in the area above the front leg, because if you can get the shot through there, it'll blow its heart up basically, and the thing will just lay over and that's it. It's dead. You know, no suffering at all. But and I know a lot of people are like, well, why don't you shoot in the head? Because the head is such a small target. And that's why if you ever join the military, whether it's the American or the Russian or any military, they will tell you aim center mass. right there every time. And that's how you do, man. But yeah, you definitely do not want some poor deer suffering because you're too much of a dumbass to actually hit it correctly. That's just embarrassing, honestly. Like in Kentucky, if you did that and somebody saw you do that, you are definitely going to be ridiculed for being a piece of shit, you know? When I was growing up, the rule was every time you pulled the trigger, you better bring something home. So there was no room for missing. There's no room for just taking any shot. You know, you had to be dead on every time. And so, yeah. I was watching the guys that talk about the guns, the fat electrician and AK guy and all that, and they're talking about reasons why no country will ever invade America. And it was like, because we'd have to make a law telling the rednecks not to taxidermize enemy soldiers. I've been keeping up with Iran stuff a little bit, and here's what I have to say. I voted for Trump. Everybody knows that. But I wish he would go even harder on everything. You know, it's like I voted for him to get in there and just tear the system up, just fuck everything up. And I don't feel like he's really doing enough of it. Now, I was glad he got rid of Pam Bondi for her bullshit. And I think there's a few other people he hired that at first we all thought would be good that need to go. But, I mean, now what has me laughing is the British were talking all that shit about how they wouldn't join America in their thing. And now Russia's just running ships right through the English Channel. And Keir Starmer's like, we will seize any Russian oil tankers we see. So like the very next day, Russia sent another oil tanker through, but this time with a Russian warship. And I know this will be hard for you guys to believe. England doesn't have a navy. All of the ships that they have are damaged and effed up and in dry docked and can't work. And the one ship they were going to send to the freaking strait to help us broke down on the way and had to go home. The British Navy has more admirals than it has warships. And it's like, how did that happen? When the Falkland Wars kicked out under Margaret Thatcher, England sent like 200 warships. You know, they were not joking. They were sending all kinds of shit, right? You're talking about the country who has the song Rule Britannia. Britannia rules the waves, right? And right now, they have no navy. They're a laugh. They're a joke. But they want to talk shit about us. If it were up to me, I say this all the time. The United States would pull out of NATO and start forming an alliance with Russia. And we could call that alliance like the Northern Alliance, whatever, the Arctic Alliance, whatever. And then we could tell all the rest of the world to go F themselves. Right in the A, you know, Russia would be a better trade partner for us any day of the week than the people. Because if we allied with Russia, Russia wouldn't want anything from us. But right now, all of Europe is on welfare payments from us. And then they want to act like dicks when we ask them to push in Iran's face. As if they all weren't whining about Iran literally a month before we decide to go over there and start kicking ass. It's like that saying, if you tell some people that Trump loves breathing, they would hold their breath. Just because they want to spite Trump. And that's the weirdest shit ever, you know? My mother-in-law's kind of like that, and we were talking the other day, and she said some stuff, and I was like, look, I will never in my whole life, no matter who the president is, root for another country over my country. And she stopped. She said, yeah, you're right. Because she's not a super crazy one of those people, but, you know. I don't understand that shit. People rooting for Iran. It's like, that's nuts. That is absolute nuts. But it's like these assholes you see on TV, and now I know I'm ranting a little bit, but you see these assholes on TV and they're like queers for Palestine. And it's like, do you know what would happen to you if you went to the Gaza Strip with your rainbow flag? Do you have any idea? And I'm not an Israel fan at all. I am not a pro-Israel Zionist, none of that shit. But I am a realist. You know what I mean? I do understand what happens. You know, and as an Orthodox Christian, how can I be a fan of the Israelis? Because they F with the Orthodox Christians as much as they do the Muslims. You just don't hear about it. But when you go to do like the walk Jesus walked and stuff, a lot of times those guys will come out and literally spit on Christian pilgrims. That is just a fact, guys. That's not hate. That's a thing that happened. And the Israeli government has been trying to stop it because, you know, people have been talking about, like, you know, we're supposed to support these guys and they're over here actively hating us. Like that can't be allowed, right? But if it comes between Israel and Iran, I know whose side I'm on, because Iran's ran by a bunch of Arab maniacs, you know, these fundamentalist mullahs and stuff, right? If Iran goes back to being Persian, even if they decide to start just worshiping the Zoroastrian religion, then I'd be super cool with Iran. I'd be like, yeah, that's cool. What's up, Big James? You go ahead and do your thing. Like Freddie Mercury. A lot of people don't know this. As a matter of fact, I did not know this. But Freddie's name was like Faoud, and he was a Zoroastrianist. His whole family were. And they were Persians that had fled Iran when, you know, they decided to start doing their thing, right? So in Iran, the whole Arabic culture and Islam and everything is an occupying force. It's not a thing native to Persia. And that's why so many of the Persian people are 100% cool with, you know, those guys getting whacked, because a lot of the Persians feel like they've been living under occupation for, you know, what's it been now, since the 70s? You know, just only in America will the same purple-haired crazy woman that tries to claim that men can have babies support a regime that forces 9-year-olds to marry old men. That is something that I think only happens in America. Maybe it happens in some Western countries too. But it's like, in order to believe, it's, what do they call that? That's like doublethink from 1984, right? When you believe two things that are obviously paradoxical to each other. And so that's what's weird. It's like, you are over here supporting a regime that wants you dead and that does horrible stuff, but you're cool with it. You're like, yeah, I'll never understand that. But then again, to quote Lopan, I was not put on this earth to get it. So there you go. That's what Lopan said. You were not brought upon this earth to get it. And I don't. But it's ridiculous, I think. In my humble freaking opinion, which happens in this case to be correct, it's ridiculous. It's so weird, you know? It's like, I mean, right off the bat, any bunch of people that thinks marrying a 9-year-old to a 50-year-old is effed up. I mean, that's that right off the bat. Because over here, we would call that a PDF file, right? But it's okay for them to do it over there? No. So even though a lot of people are like super anti-war and they're like, America needs to like not get involved in other countries, I am the opposite. I think America needs to look around the world, see which countries are the most effed in the head, and straighten their asses right out. As the supposed good guy Christians of the world, it is our job to put in the evil. And I can't think of much more evil than marrying 9-year-olds to 70-year-old men. And, hanging women for, not wearing a rag on their head or something. I mean, that shit's just evil. And then people will be like, are you willing to sacrifice your son for that? And my answer is yes. And when my time came, I went. That's the thing. So they can't say, would you do? I already did it. I was over there. I already dealt with those assholes. You know what I mean? So, Yeah, I don't know how you guys have it in Russia, but in the West, the worst people out there are white, upper middle class, liberal women who generally have some stupid degree, like women's studies or some shit like that. And they like to sit around and talk about how men have oppressed them their whole lives. And they don't seem to understand that the only reason civilization exists is because we built it for them, because men don't need it. Like if we were somehow able to just drop spores and men jump out of the ground like orcs in 40K, we probably wouldn't have all this shit. Because all a man needs really is an axe. We will poop in a hole, we'll pee against a tree, we'll kill stuff and roast it over fire. We don't need all this shit. We can live. Yeah, it's just so weird, man. Big James. It is a strange thing. And it's just like, but like I said, I will never root against my country. I didn't root against my country under Obama. I didn't root against my country under Biden. I'm never going to root against America. I might not even disagree with the war per se, but I'm never going to get out there and be like, oh, boo. Like I said, I think America should be making allies with other strong Western powers and then using our strength to straighten up the world. We could end the cannibalism in Africa. We could end the slavery that's rampant throughout North Africa. We could put an end to all these warlords that are just torturing their people. There's so much we could do for the good. And yes, probably soldiers would die. But as an ex-soldier, I can tell you, you join the military, you are prepared to die. I mean, it's like we all know. When they said I was going to Iraq, I knew there was the possibility I was going to die. And I was okay with it because it's part of the job, It's like if you don't want to risk getting shot by an enemy soldier, here's plan one. Don't join the army. Because it's not like anybody was drafted back then. Now they're talking about bringing the draft back. And I honestly think it'd be the best thing ever. I think if we started putting our young people through like a year of mandatory service, it'd straighten a lot of these assholes out. It really would. A10 alert. Yep, there it went again. You heard it. As a matter of fact, I am one of those assholes that the Army straightened out. Because when I was young, I believed all the stupid shit. Because it's easy to believe the stupid shit, It's easy to sit around and blame other people for the fact that you're poor and shit like that. And then you get into the Army and you realize, shut the F up and just do your job. And yeah. And then when you leave, you're like, well, okay then. I'll tell you what, at the time, it was not fun because, the way life is. But in hindsight, going through infantry school was like the funnest thing I ever did in my life. And I think if like a civilian had to pay to go through infantry school, it would probably be thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, how much, if you were one of those adventure vacation guys, would you have to pay to go somewhere hike all around the country, learn all kinds of shit about reading maps and shooting azimuths, fire weapons a lot, all kinds of weapons, not just an M16. You had to learn how to fire the grenade launcher, the M249s, the M240s. I mean, you know, camping out, eating crappy dried food, exercising. I mean, if you were to sit down and try and figure out how much that would cost a civilian for that experience, it would probably be tens of thousands of dollars. And I got paid for it. Yeah, what happened to Iran was 100% colonization, just like all of North Africa. See, there's a guy out there and he does a video about the Crusades. And he talks about how modern people will tell you the Crusades was this horrible crime, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is the forces of Islam had been invading Christian and European land for like 400 years before the Europeans finally said enough. I mean, they'd taken Spain, they'd invaded France, they had destroyed Eastern Rome, they'd conquered Constantinople, they were pushing into Hungary, Austria, they conquered the Balkans. It was like, if you look at a map right now, every part of that map that we consider the Islamic world, other than Persia, was Christian. Every part of it, from Armenia, Anatolia, all the way down, it was Christian. And these assholes come out of the peninsula there, the Saudi peninsula, and just started whipping people's asses. And the only reason they ever beat the Eastern Romans is when the Arabs showed up and started attacking. Eastern Rome had just finished with like a years-long major war with, I think, the Sassanid Persians. And because they had lost so many men in their war between, Constantinople and the Persians, the Arabs were able to just roll in and take both. And then you got a guy like Hassan Piker who will get on and talk about colonization. The Americans colonized this. It's like, Hassan, you're a Turk. Your people literally come from near China. You should not be in Anatolia. Anatolia has always been Hellenistic, Greek. And so, yeah, that aggravates me too. When the people who are actually the colonizers try to make you feel guilty for being a colonizer, it's like, get out of here with that. Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I saw that Texas guy just go off and be like, no more. I think Florida might have been passing law to outlaw Sharia. I think Texas is too. Anyone in America who hasn't opened their eyes up and realized what's going on is sadly a fool, because these people know they cannot defeat the United States in a war, a jihad. So they're doing the next best thing. And if you read the Quran, it talks about this as a tactic. The idea of going in and being really nice until you have power. And once you rise to power, then you enforce Islam on everybody. And it's happened over and over again throughout history. But sometimes when I'm just feeling spiteful and I see these blue-haired women online talking all their shit, there are times when I say, I kind of sometimes wish Islam would take over and like institute Sharia law, because even though it would F me over, I could laugh at them while it was effing me over, That's spiteful, James. Just being like, yeah, I know it would suck for me, but at least I could revel in how much it sucks for them. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't suck for me that bad because I'm a man. So, not that I would ever convert, because I will never, turn my back on the actual God. But as a man, converting to Islam wouldn't be that bad. But if you're one of these freaking loudmouth feminist women, yeah, convert to Islam, you're done. You know, that's the end of your bullshit right there. I mean, you raise your voice to a man, you'll be going to prison or getting your ass whipped. What's up, William Silva? I am painting carnivorous apes. I've never tried to watch any of this through a phone, but I've heard it's a real pain. But we were just chatting with my Russian friend about some of this shit going on, and it's like, yeah, I don't get it. I mean, you know, actually, for all I know, Not Your Echo, in theory, and myself could be related. Probably not, but my great grandparents came from what is now northern Ukraine, and they fled during the revolution because they were landowners and had money, and they had the foresight to realize what was going on. Yeah, all of that, you know, these feminists for Palestine, gays for Palestine, these people that seem to be rooting for Iran to win, and it's like, to me, it seems like treason, but fortunately for the world, I'm not in charge of this shit. Or I would probably be dragging people up on treason charges. But like I said, if I have any complaint about our current administration is I think he's too soft. You know? Like letting those assholes riot up in Minneapolis, I would have sent the Marines in immediately. Immediately. And if I caught any of them busting up any kind of property or looting at all, you know, legally in the United States, if you catch looters in a riot, you can just shoot them. And I would have. Now, I don't know if that would have made things better or not, but yeah, I would rule with an iron fist for sure. These furries and these other weirdos out here, they would not like it if I were in charge, because I would hammer the shit out of them until they decide to stay home, right? And the school teachers taking their 7-year-old students out to protest, they'd be way done. As a matter of fact, that whole school would be done. I'd cook the whole school, man. I'd take away all funding, everything. And then they could all just, you know, sit at home and contemplate. They can contemplate what they did on the tree of woe. I guess what I'm saying is I would get biblical on that ass, is what I would do. Biblical. I would go Old Testament. But even if I went New Testament, that'd be fine too, because, you know, the man said, stop. You know, that's the thing people seem to forget. The man didn't say, I forgive you. It's okay. Keep going and being an asshole. The man said, stop. Don't do it anymore. So if you decide to be like, yeah, F that guy, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Well, guess what? You're effed. That's just it. You are effed in the A. You are not redeemed. Up, somebody's at the door. Let me get it. That's another problem we have in America is weak ass Christians. I'm coming. Hola, ¿cómo estás, amigos? Amigos.
Hello.
How you doing?
What?
Go.
Hello. I know we're early, but it didn't take as long at my mom's as I thought it was. Oh, okay.
Some of the guys in my game showed up.
Yeah. And I expected that it was going to take much longer than it did. And then.
Okay, why is this open? Let's turn that off.
Here's
Turn that off.
Okay.
There we go. Standing up a little bit. Could be, could be. There is a, I don't know if it's a correlation or not, but it seems like a lot of the hardcore feminists tend to date what we would call very misogynist men a lot of times, and at least fantasize about them. I mean, if you want to be really disgusted, look up like the top porn that women look at, and it's crazy shit that like no normal human being would look at this shit, and yet it's the most popular for them. Um, that's the thing is a lot of people have like say some of our shared ancestry have just become weak soy boys, right? And a lot of women, whether they want to admit it or not, they're looking for a dude with like high testosterone. You know, you don't even got to be successful. You just got to be muscular, you know, B-shaped, high testosterone, whatever. And then you'll end up having a bunch of baby mamas because that's what the women want, even if they act like they don't. And yeah, in the West, we have simped ourselves. A lot of men have. But I say that's along that goes along with the weird catch you later, William. That goes along with the weird as I call it, the soft Christians, which are basically the Protestants, and to a lesser regard, the Roman Catholics, and to a much lesser regard, even some Orthodox churches. Uh, there are some things that can never be accepted. And any church that tells you that they can be accepted is leading you straight to hell. And in America, that would be, you know, Methodists and Episcopalians. I mean, I could name them all, but, you know, if you walk into your supposed Christian church and there's a rainbow flag or something hanging in the church, you need to turn around and walk out because that is satanic bullshit right there. And they'll drag you with them. That's basically how it is. You know, they will drag you right there down with them. So now I'm not a priest or anything, and I'm not even a good Christian. So, you know, as a matter of fact, I wouldn't trust anybody who says they are, you know, because it's one of those things where we try, but you're never going to. Yeah, toxic masculinity. I had a buddy of mine that has been my friend since like the third grade. And he married one of these lefty women. And we were sitting at the game table because he games with me. And he started talking about toxic masculinity. And I asked him what it was. And he could not explain it. Because I wasn't going to say, shut up, idiot. You know, first I was going to kind of query, you know, a little bit, see where he's coming from, right? And I was just like, so what is toxic masculinity? He had no idea. And it's like, okay. But that's true with a lot of things, you know. You talk to these people that are on that weird, super progressive side, and they'll tell you something is a way, but you and them know it's not a way. Right. That's what I'm saying, Big James. And I'm not even trying to act superior and say that has never happened in an Orthodox church. Because sometimes there are bishops and priests that fall. But within Orthodoxy, if that happens, we tend to get rid of them ASAP. But some of these, like the Episcopalians and the Methodists and stuff, yeah, and that is the thing, Andre. Well, Andre can tell us about it, being where he lives. But this is something I know, and Andre can tell me I'm wrong or not. But if you're trying to date a Russian woman, you can't act soft. If you act like a simp, some kind of cuck, if you don't act masculine, you will get nowhere. Because Eastern European women want a man. for real. Like in America, it's different. But you go to Eastern Europe, Serbia or something, and think you're going to date some chick by acting like some kind of sissy boy, you will get nothing. You know, because in Eastern Europe, when a woman dates a dude, she's dating to see if she's going to marry you right off the bat. There's no bullshit like, oh, I'll go to the movie with this guy just cause. No, you're tendering your resume, and you are being tested. And if you are not capable of providing and protecting, you are done. Just what it is. I've seen it so many times in my life, so many times. Americans trying to date like Serbians mostly, but Russian women too. Yeah, when you get that cute little Russian girl, she wants you to walk around with like the imminent threat of violence constantly there, so that every other person around you knows, don't f with that dude, because win or lose, bones will be thrown. You know what I'm saying? And that's what they like. And I mean, yeah, it's like the rules for dating a Serbian woman. Tell her when you're picking her up. Order when you pick her up, give her a gift, flowers. When you get to the restaurant, you don't tell her what restaurant do you want to go to. You tell her where you're going. Then you order for both of you. Then you bring her home punctually and don't expect a kiss. And if you do all these things right and you're like, a masculine man, well, you might get a second date. And then you might get a third, and eventually you might get married. And within a year, she's probably going to be pregnant, because it's what they want. They don't want all this, oh, let's be together and eat ice cream and blah, blah, blah. No, a lot of them want like 5 kids right off the bat. They're like, yeah, this is my husband. He's a badass, and he's going to put babies in me as long as I can have them, And personally, I love that. But maybe it's because I have Slavic blood. So I'm like, hell yeah. Or maybe it's because I'm a redneck from Kentucky, because both of my grandparents had at least 8 children. One of them had 11. So I think big families are awesome. I had total of 3 kids. I would have had 10. I loved my children. I loved raising them. I even loved it when they peed on me. It didn't matter. I loved having the kids. I loved watching them play. I mean, me and my current wife, we were young enough to have kids when we got together, but I guess I wasn't planting the seed deep enough or something, because it just never happened for us. But we I wouldn't have mind having another couple, yeah. So these couples you see on YouTube, they're like, oh, we don't have children and we're so happy about it. I'm sitting here like, then why are you married? Because if the goal wasn't to have children, I would never marry anyone. I mean, when I got with the current wife 20-something years ago, I 100% expected we were going to have kids. It didn't work, but that was the goal. It wasn't to hang out and play frickin' Monopoly. I mean, shit. That's crazy. Now, on the other hand, she cooks, she cleans, she works hard. She's a wonderful woman. So even though we never had kids, she has been an amazing mother to the ones I already had and took care of them. And, so I lucked out, but still, yeah. Now, my nephew, he met this girl, and he told me one of the first questions he asked on their first date was, how many kids do you want? And she said 5. And he said, okay, because he wanted at least 4 or 5. So, I mean, and I think, well, that is beautiful. But my nephew's a genius. He's an officer in the Navy on submarines and all that. But yeah, if you're dating a woman, date one. Ask her about the kid situation. If they say no, but you want kids, walk away. Walk away. You can't think, well, maybe I'll marry her and later she'll change her mind. That's just lying to you and her, man. If she don't want kids, fine. Don't have kids. I won't be there. I'll be looking for some other cutie to have a bunch of kids with. You know what I'm saying? And that's a problem with America. It's like television and everything is constantly trying to tell young people that they don't want kids. But, you know, life without children is ultimately meaningless. I mean, I hate to say that, especially because there are some people out there who, through no fault of their own, just can't. But it's like when I die, I have many grandchildren already. So I can die happy. You know, I've got a grandson that looks kind of just like me, really. And I've got like 7 grandchildren total, right? So I've did my part. My lineage goes on. My ancient ancestors will look at me and think, thumbs up, bro. You did what you're supposed to be doing. Hopefully God will be happy. Everyone's happy. But the idea of just being like, hey, you know, we have a function on the planet, and I'm just not going to do it because I want to be able to eat ice cream. That's just like, what is wrong with you, man? Like, what went wrong in your head? However, the caveat to that is I am a hillbilly from Kentucky. And look, even to this day, all we do up there is have kids. You know, like every family I know of up there's got multiple kids. One of my cousins has so many kids that when they go to the baseball game, they have to take 2 trips. So like the husband and a bunch of kids and the mom goes, and then the mom and the kids get out of the car and go to the bleachers, and then the husband drives back to get the rest of the kids who are staying with his mom, because they can't even fit all the kids in the car. I think they got like 10. And you know what? They are happy as clams. You know, never hear them complain. They're busy, but you never hear them complaining about it, you know. And yes, Andre, that is entirely the truth. Take one of my favorite animals in the world, the red panda, which isn't actually a panda. It's closer related to like a weasel or something like that. It's a mastilde. The only time they ever want to hang out with another member of their whatever is when they're reproducing or raising kids. And as soon as they're done, them little bastards are gone. I mean, the females and the males. Because even a red panda, cute as they are, realizes what the whole point of being with someone else is. Otherwise, you might as well just climb up a tree and take a nap, right? Because that's what they do. And me being a huge fan of the whole weasel, wolverine, ferret, all of those critters, they're my favorite animals. Yeah, I think if they're doing it, it's probably the right thing to do. And that probably sounds really stupid, but you know, there goes our jet getting ready to take off. Now, Andre, how are things doing in the motherland? The last time I looked at the war, it looked like the Federation was really just taking territory. And it's funny because I deleted the videos, I think. But when this thing first kicked off, I told everyone that, you know, you might root for Ukraine all you want. And this whole war is really terrible. And I wish it didn't have to happen. But there's no way in hell they will ever defeat the Russian Federation. And see, the thing a lot of Americans don't know, because they're not curious enough to look up to it, is before Russia invaded Ukraine, there had been 8 years where the, as you would call it, the junta government of Ukraine had been persecuting ethnic Russians in the Donbass region. And by persecuting, I mean killing them. Thousands of them. And that is what caused the Federation to actually invade. It was because the CIA financed the revolution and put Zelensky in power. He was not elected. The guy that was actually rightfully elected is the one that they threw out. You know, that shit was all set up. And the saddest part is so many of my young Orthodox Christian Slavic brothers are dying for something that never needed to happen. Never needed to happen. And I mean, you know, and that's another thing with the lefties in America being all like, yeah, go Ukraine. And it's like, you do know Ukraine is like one of the most corrupt countries on the planet, and also one of the countries where they have like child trafficking and shit like that. You know, like young Ukrainian children are trafficked all over the world. You know, it's like under no circumstances is the government of Ukraine the good guys. Now, the people I feel bad for, obviously. But look what happened. As soon as the whole thing started kicking out, the Ukrainians started persecuting the Orthodox Church and tried to make their own breakaway church. And they started destroying churches and cutting crosses down. And I mean, so basically, yeah, they're acting like a bunch of assholes. And one reason is, and this is something a lot of people don't know, is the Ukrainians who live in the west side of Ukraine, they don't consider themselves Russian. They consider themselves more like Polish and Lithuanian. And in World War II, they did, in fact, fight for the Germans. Whereas the people in Ukraine, current day Ukraine, who live in Crimea and the Donbass region, they consider themselves 100% ethnic Russian. So, yeah, there's a lot more going on than most, I would hate to say it, lazy Americans are willing to even look into, you know. It's like, it's kind of like when like the Ukrainians are like, we must have Crimea back. I laugh because I know there's a statue of Vladimir the Great at Sevastopol. Vladimir the Great was the first Russian king who Christianized Russia and kind of united the Kievan Rus. He was of the House of Rurik, possibly Swedish, who knows. And there is no way in hell, under any circumstances, that the Russian Federation is going to give up the city where Russians converted to Christ. Never. And that's before you even get into the reality of it's a warm water port, which is something the Russians really want. So, yeah, when that whole thing happened, and you'll notice it happened immediately as the Maidan coup was going on. It's like they were riding in Maidan, and all of a sudden, Crimea was like, we're Russians. And everybody's like, oh, no, we got to go to war, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here thinking, you guys don't understand the Russian mindset. They will start World War III over that peninsula, 100%, without even feeling bad about it. You know, they'll nuke the UK into nothing. And personally, I don't blame them. That would be like if somebody wanted to be a breakaway republic and take, like, I don't know, one of our major things. You know, the Black Hills or something. You know, Mount Rushmore or something. I mean, that's just not something you tolerate. You know, something I've noticed, though, not your echo. Every time I see battle footage from Ukraine, it's always like super old Russian equipment. And I know for a fact that it's like, why am I seeing footage of a T-64 taking on a Ukrainian T-72? I know the Russians got T-90s. Even if the Armada is not fully a functional thing, the T-90 is, the T-80s are. The BMP 2 and 3 is, and yet you're seeing all this old equipment. And I'm thinking, are the Russians just throwing the old stuff out first because they're like, yeah, whatever? I mean, maybe. I mean, the Russians aren't even behaving the way I was taught when I was in the military they're supposed to behave. Well, they are now, but they weren't in the first couple of years. Everyone knows Russian warfare is you move up a little, you artillery the shit out of everything, and then once you've artillery the shit out of everything, you move up a little more. Rinse, repeat until there's no one left. That is the Russian way of warfare. Whereas we,
How do you know, Internet?
how you doing, Rob? We tend to be more of the scalpel, kind of running in and trying to take the head off the snake. But the Russians, they do it slow and steady, inch at a time, right? And if Russia really wanted to, they could have easily reduced Kiev to nothing. I mean, nothing. And yet they haven't. My theory is once they push the Ukrainians out of the whole Donbass region, they'll stop. I think that's all it was about. The Russians were sick and tired of the people in Donbass being mistreated by the Polish-Lithuanian people from Western Ukraine, and they stepped in and said, nah, it's enough of this shit. And then, of course, like Not Your Echo said, the UN, NATO, whatever, they all wanted to keep this shit going as long as possible, which means, in a way, the West has been sacrificing young Ukrainian men like their lives are totally meaningless, just in the hopes that somehow it will affect Russia or make Russia weaker. But it hasn't. It really hasn't, you know. So I'll tell you what, if I were like a native Ukrainian, I'd probably be pissed off at the West right about now, you know, because we just give them just enough to think they can hold on, but they can't. It's just not ever going to happen. They're not going to hold on. And if they were smart, they'd just give up the Donbass region and Crimea and call it a day. And be happy that the Russians were willing to stop there. But I don't think that Zelensky's very smart. I think he's a coke addict. And I think he does not give a shit about the Ukrainian men at the front. I don't think anyone in the Ukrainian government gives a shit about any one of those soldiers at all. You know, they just send them out there to die. What do they care? Most of the government of Ukraine isn't even Ukrainian. So why would they care? You know? Zelensky, his people live in Israel. And the oligarchs that are backing him also live in Israel. So do you think they give a shit about some Slav in Ukraine? No, not at all. And yet they keep going out there and killing their own brothers and getting killed by their own brothers so that some oligarchs halfway around the world can continue trafficking children and laundering money through the war. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh no, he just said something anti-Semitic because he mentioned Israel. But look, guys, sometimes it's just true. Okay? I'm not trying to be anti anything, but sometimes shit is just true. And if you look it up, you will see who the people behind this war are. And, you know, it is not my fault that they happen to be all of the same tribe. I mean, if you want to go back in history, the people who created the Soviet Union, I mean, Solzhenitsyn wrote a whole book about it. We're not Russian. And that's why they didn't give a shit about the Russian lives that they killed, which was like millions upon tens of millions. But they didn't care because they weren't Russian. You know, I mean, Stalin was from Georgia. And Lenin, who knows what he thought he was, but ethnically he was like the son of a rabbi or something. And Karl Marx was also had a rabbi in his family, but he was a straight up Satanist and just all around horrible person. So, you know, so yeah, you know, sacrificing, you know, 20 million Russian soldiers against the Germans, that's easy when they're not your people. I'll even get even crazier with this. Report me if you want. Ben Shapiro will never go to war, but he's okay with your kids going. So I don't like him. Anyone that I think is not 100% loyal to the United States but lives in the United States, I wish they'd go somewhere else. And that's not like an anti-Zionist thing or an anti-whatever. That's all of them. If you live in America and you are not loyal to America, drag your ass back to wherever your people are from, whether it's somewhere in the Middle East or not, and have fun there, because I don't want you here. And I don't think that that's an unreasonable request at all. And if it is, you guys can tell me that's unreasonable, you know? And it's not even ethnic, because, like I said, black guys have been in America for 400 years. They're Americans. They deserve to be here. They're Americans. Mexicans have been in the Southwest since before Texas was even Texas. They're Americans. Sorry. You know, if people got a problem with that, sorry to tell you this, but when you go to El Paso and you see a bunch of Hispanic people, I mean, those are Americans. They've been there just as long as you have, you know. And if you go to the freaking deep South and you see a bunch of brothers hanging out, well, guess what? They've been here probably longer than you have. Those are Americans. But anyone who comes over here and doesn't want to be an American needs to go right back to where they come from. Yeah, man, I didn't mean to rant, guys. I do apologize for that. I wasn't trying to, but I guess I just had to get that out of my system a little bit. But yeah, I apologize. I'm not trying to sound like some kind of ass. It's just, you know. Painting this freaking rogue. Miss J, what color is your character's hair?
I think it's black.
With the white stripe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I found a really cool miniature I was going to paint up for your character, and then I'm like, what color's your hair, bro?
Yeah,
I probably should.
hair's black.
I probably should dug the character sheet up and just looked, but I was lazy. Just like I always paint my wife's character's hair blonde, but I'm not sure if it's blonde or red. But since she's blonde, I just paint her character blonde. But
I
her
think her character's blonde too because she's a Viking.
yeah, she's a Dane.
So,
But I mean, you know,
blonde.
well, they could have red hair too. I mean, whatever. They can have any color of hair. I mean, just so to trim it out. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we did too. You're right. Like all of our old 113s either got converted to like mortar carriers or whatever, or we sold them. When I was in Iraq, we actually got in a firefight at this railroad at what we called Objective Red 1. And we captured an Iraqi 113, which is funny because that's an American-made armored infantry carrier. And I remember just looking at it and being like, wow, you know, we have some of those in our company. But the ones we had were either equipped with TOW2s or, yeah, they either had the TOW launcher on the top or you opened them up and they had a 120 millimeter mortar in them. Or if you're German, a 12 centimeter mortar. which is a big freaking mortar. Let me tell you, that thing will wreck an area. But yeah, and now what the Army is doing is they're taking the really old M2 Bradleys, the old ones, and they're taking the turrets off of them, and they're converting them into anti-tank missile launchers and mortar carriers and medical vehicles. And so basically a lot of the really old M2 Bradleys and M3 Bradleys are being totally refit to do everything but what they used to do. And instead of designing a new vehicle, we're just building more M2 Bradleys. Even though supposedly they came up with a new design for a turret on the M2 Bradley that instead of having the 25 millimeter, it was going to have a 50 millimeter gun on that thing. So that'd be a hell of an upgrade. But I do like that old chain gun, though. That chain gun's pretty nice. And it had a dual feed because it's actually an electric powered weapon, you know, a chain gun. And so underneath where the gunner sets, there's like a bay under there. You take the doors off, and on one side is AP rounds, and on the other side is HE rounds. And you can switch whatever you want to fire from the gunner's position. You just and it'll feed from either side. So I mean, if you think you've got enemy hiding out in one of those little, you know, brick buildings in the Middle East, I mean, you just pump that HE and slap about 30 rounds in there and see how they feel about it, you know. And if you got to take out anything that even remotely is like a vehicle, you just hit the AP and just freaking light it up. Now, I can't say I ever did that other than in training because your boy was a dismount. And in case you guys are wondering how this stuff happens, it is completely random. It's like you show up to the unit and whoever's in charge of whatever vehicle you get assigned to will tell you what your job is. So you could show up, and if they need a driver, they can be like, you're going to drive. Or if they need a gunner, they can be like, you're going to be the gunner. Or if you're like, what happened to me, you show up and they're like, you're going to be dismounted. And also you're going to carry the machine gun. And you just say, who is Sergeant? You know? And I'm such an old timer that when I got in the Army, the machine gun I trained on originally was an M60, like a Vietnam era M60 machine gun. And I'll tell you what, loved it. Loved it. There was a saying that they taught you when you're training with the M60 is you open the feed tray up and you put CLP, which is, you know, the lubricant, and you squirt it into the workings, and you know you've got enough lubrication in the M60 when you see it start dripping out of the trigger. That's how you know you got enough lubrication. And then once you've hit that level of lubrication, just drop a 200 round magazine in that, well, not magazine, belt. Drop a 200 round belt on that bad boy and go to town, man. And people don't even understand. Like, you could practically snipe with an M60. If you were to put like if you were to put optics on that thing, it'll reach out 1,100 yards all day long and produce casualties, no problem. It's not the function of it, but it can do that. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't know this, but military people who've been in like an infantry situation or whatever know this. The point of the machine gun in a dismount squad is actually for suppression, because fire teams work together, and the whole point is you want to suppress the enemy so they can't shoot at you while your fellow fire team can flank and infiltrate and, you know, take them out. Now, if you do happen to take people out with the machine gun, well, that's awesome. You know, that's icing on the cake, but it's not really exactly the purpose. You aim at them, you pull the trigger. But if you don't hit them, well, that's okay. You keep their heads down. This is why, let me convert this to a game thing. For this reason, I love Twilight 2004th edition. Because when you fire any kind of really automatic weapon like 249, 240s, whatever, not only do you roll attack dice, but you roll suppression dice. So you can actually miss a target, but get enough suppression dice on them that they have to make a roll versus their like coolness under fire. And if they fail it, they have to just go prone wherever they are and stay there. So yeah, you can actually take people's turns from them by suppressing the shit out of them. And that is how real modern combat works, you know. Gentlemen, okay, and it came back. That is why the U.S. Army fights the way it does. Actually, the Russians fight the same way too, except they have a, what is it called? Their big P something K. It fires the same rounds as a Mosin Nagant 7.62 by 5.4. Yeah, that's a pretty good machine gun. You know, it's all right. But like I said early on, when we very first started talking about guns, nothing will ever be better than the 50 cal. And the Russians tried to copy it. They call theirs the 12.7 millimeter, and which is basically a 50 cal. And those two weapons have been in use for like ever. You hear M60 and think Rambo? Yeah. I'm a big guy. I was a really big guy when I was in the Army because I was working out all the time. An M60 without the belt in it weighs 27 pounds. It's firing 7.62 by 5.4, so 308 Winchester. And I'm sure yet that you could stand up and fire that thing. I just don't think you could hit anything, you know? That's a big problem with, like, you know, automatic fire. It's like in video games, that the ones that have the cone and like the first bullet is accurate, but then after that it just does that. Well, that's actually not unrealistic modeling automatic fire, you know. And even with the M60, if you're on the bipod or the tripod, I had a partner that carried the tripod. Every time you squeeze the trigger, in your brain, silently, you're supposed to say 6 to 9 round burst and then let go. And then you take a breath and you go 6 to 9 round burst. And then you see a target, 6 to 9 round burst, 6 to 9 round burst. And because if you try to go buck wild on an M60, you will melt the barrel right off of that thing, you know. You just squeeze down on that trigger and let it go, that barrel start glowing red hot and it'll start warping and shit. And then you got to put that asbestos glove on and grab it and pop it loose and put a new barrel in. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. That's not something you want to do unless you're being overrun. And at that point, it's like, okay, brown trousers time. You know what I mean? I'm just unloading this bitch because it's getting ready to be a thing. But Stallone, with 2 M60s, firing them, there's no way he was ever going to hit anything more than 5 feet away from him. It's just not happening, you know. But it looked cool. I'll give him that. It looked real cool. But there is the reality for you guys who did not know. The M60 kicks like a damn mule. On the tripod, it don't. But even on the bipod, because you drop that bipod quick and you can get down behind it and grab it, you hold on to that thing because it will freaking, you know. But also, like I said, from a prone position with the bipod or the tripod, you can be accurate to 1,000 yards. Like, for real. You can totally just gank a bastard at 1,000 yards. You know, so great weapon. I think some SOG units still use those weird modified M60s where they shorten the barrel and they put like a front pistol grip on them and did all this shit to it. I think some of the like Deltas and shit like that are still using that weapon because it's a great weapon. As a matter of fact, having seen both the M60, the 249, and the other medium machine gun, I think it's 240. I honestly don't know why they got rid of the M60. They could have just built more M60s because the new 7.62 or 308 Winchester machine gun we got from Fabrique Nationale, it's basically just like an M60. I mean, I don't know what the difference is. Maybe it's a little lighter. And the 249 is a joke. You know, giving a squad a machine gun that fires light caliber rounds like the 249, that's a joke. That thing can't even punch through a door on a car, you know. Whereas the M60 will go through a car and hit the dude behind the car. You know, it's like the 249. I mean, I get kind of the idea of it. They wanted to make sure everybody in the squad was using the same ammo. Supposedly, the M249 could take an M16 magazine, except, yeah, it shred the shit out of it, and you'd never be able to use that magazine again. And then the other issue was 5.56 just is not big enough for a machine gun. It doesn't have the range. It's just not scary enough to suppress anybody, you know. But when they heard that 60 chugging, oh yeah, that'll scare anybody. So, but I do love the Rambo stuff too, though, Coco. I do love the Rambo stuff, and I'm pretty sure Schwarzenegger might have used an M60 in Commando. And the one bald black dude in Predator was carrying one of those special forces style M60s with the front grip and shit. The guy that was always shaving. One of my favorite characters in the movie, that guy. Sucked when he got. And like, according to the lore, the bald black dude that was always shaving was like best friends with Jesse Ventura's character. And I don't know, something about that tickled me a little bit, you know? Because you got the big, burly, muscly redneck with a freaking chain gun. And then you got the brother with the M60 and they're buddies. But like what's his name said, when you're in the Army, you don't worry about all that shit. Especially when you're in the field on deployment. You don't care what color the guy next to you is. You just hope they can do their job. And if they can do their job and they're a capable soldier, then you love them. You know, like I still, to this day, hey, what's up, Timmy? To this day, I stayed in contact with some of the dudes from my platoon, including my platoon sergeant who lives up in the Carolinas. He's retired. And like, I am a hillbilly from Eastern Kentucky and obviously very white. And he's a black dude from the Carolinas. And we've both been out of the Army 30 years and we still talk like every week. You know, he asks me what I'm doing. I tell him. He laughs, you know, and we talk about this and that. And now I've got the numbers to like a lot of the other dudes from my platoon back then. Hey, Timmy, I'm getting ready to end this. Otherwise, you know for a fact you'd be invited on. But also, don't you got a game? Because I got a game coming up. So, yeah. It's a weird thing because it doesn't matter. Like, before you go into the Army, you could be like the straight up most racist KKK type guy ever. And I'm not admitting that I was, because I was not. But you go to war and you share a foxhole with a brother, you will love that guy to the day you die. Bill Duke. Who's Bill Duke? Is that the name of the character from, yeah. Oh, the game's next week. But yeah, so in America, if we really wanted to end racism, again, just draft everybody. Put them in the Army together for about a year, run them through shit, you know, get to where black people, Hispanics, white people, they're all together and they actually get to understand, you know, how to live together. And then when they get out of the military, dude, my neighbor was an ex-tanker, black guy. He and I used to hang out nonstop, and I'm still sad he moved. You know, because when you've been in the military a long time, you don't give a shit. I mean, now if he'd been in the Navy, maybe I might have been like, yeah, I want to be your friend. But he was an Army tanker, I was an infantryman, so it was like, high five, bro. You know, whatever, man. And his wife was a German lady he'd married when he'd been deployed to Wildflicken. And she would make the best schnitzel. And she would always bring me and my wife some of the schnitzel. And she'd make homemade sauerkraut and like all that, like authentic homemade German food. And then her husband, Eli, that's not his name, but whatever, he knew I was I was Southerner. I was into that deep South culture, right? So every time he would make collards with ham or black eyed peas or some shit like that, your boy got some, you know? So I guess what I'm saying is I got invited to the picnic. I got invited to the cookout, you know, because the guy throwing the cookout was ex-Army and so was I, you know? It's like, you know, yeah. Fun times. I mean, really fun times. It's weird, you know. It's almost like if you guys remember the actor's name, awesome. If you remember watching The Watchmen, and the original Silk Spectre gives a speech about the older she gets, like the better the past seems to her. And you know what? That's actually pretty true. It's actually pretty true. You know, because there were a lot of stuff I did back then that I was not a huge fan of doing when I was doing it. But now, 30 years on, and I look back and I'm like, man, that was cool, you know. I guess I'm getting philosophical. And before I get too philosophical, I need to paint this guy right here. And for those of you who don't know, that is an ogre king, or ogre, no, ghoul king. Yeah, he was one of my favorite characters. And the first time I saw the movie, I was really sad when he got ganked. I think the reason he was one of my favorite characters might have been because he was carrying an M60 too. And I was like, okay, all right, I see you, brother. You got your M60, I got mine. Yours is a little different, but whatever, man. It's all good. You know, it's all good in the hood, right? And yeah, I'll tell you what, I miss Bear for one reason above a lot of reasons. Not just because we had a lot of fun bullshitting around before, you know, he decided not to hang out, but he did the best freaking Jesse Ventura um, ever. I don't think I'd ever in my entire life heard anyone Jesse Ventura better than Jesse Ventura. And Bear could just, you know, you see, I was a Navy SEAL and I got home in the Baja and all that kind of shit. Oh man, it cracked me up every time. And look how things have gone, man. People couldn't be cool, so now I ain't got my bro Shadow on as much because he's doing shit, and Bear ain't on as much. So it's like the three amigos just disintegrated because, and I'm not blaming anyone. So if Mobius is still here, I'm not blaming you, Mobius, at all. I'm just saying that, you know, I wish that things hadn't had to go that way. For those of you, and I know some of you pointed out, and you're 100% right, that he might have insinuated this or that about my character occasionally. But you know what? I don't care. Right? So if he insinuated that I was like Yahtzee adjacent, I don't care. I don't care. You know, it's like if someone calls me some of that shit at this point in my life, I don't care. I laugh about it. I'm like, all right, whatever. I mean, could be worse. I could be a communist, right? Because given a choice, and I know this is probably a hot take, but if somebody come up to me and said, hey, you have to live under this regime or that regime, well, communism will always be last. Always. Now, if that meant that my mostly German ass ends up dead on the Eastern Front, well, I guess that's just how my life would have went. But yeah, there's no way, you know, no way. I mean, so yeah, that should honestly, if you think about it, guys, and I know some of you are tired of hearing me go on, and I am getting ready to end this. But if you think about it, is it more of an insult to call someone a Yahtzee or to call them a tanky? Yeah, Billy was awesome, but you should have heard, like Bear knew a lot about that stuff because he was in that, you know, career path. And apparently Billy, they had to bail him out of jail and he was constantly getting into shit and like scrapping. And yeah, I mean, you know, so I get a nice uniform and I get sent out to get killed by the Soviets, or I get sent to the gulag and get killed by the Soviets. It's like, well, at least with one, I got a K98. Those are nice rifles, you know? I mean, or maybe if it was like real life, I'd be on an MG42 or something. But in the other one, maybe I just told my girlfriend something that the government didn't like. And now my ass is dying on Cannibal Island in Siberia. That is not, I would much rather go out fighting than just be arrested and sent to die of starvation somewhere. And the Cannibal Island thing, if you don't know, there's a documentary. My wife put it on one night and promptly fell asleep, which meant I watched it because it was so horrifying. Apparently, they took a lot of Latvians and Lithuanians and various people and they put them on this island. And then they starved them so bad that these people started eating each other. And like they were killing each other over warm coats because the government, the Soviet government, had told them that they would be supplied tools and everything they need to like build their own little stadel. And they weren't given anything. And they were dumped off right before winter. And the only kind of what do you call it? The only roofs and walls in that whole place were the guards. And the island was surrounded by frozen swamp. And literally, yeah, they were eating each other. And the guards, their job wasn't to stop the inmates from doing horrible shit to each other. It was to make sure they didn't escape. So if you murdered a fellow inmate to eat him, the guards didn't care. Let you do that shit. I don't know. I can't speak for the man, but never heard him say anything privately or publicly. Yeah, I know you're biased, and I did. If he did, I didn't notice. But other people were like, you know, it seemed kind of that way. But like I said, I don't care. Every one of you who ever come into my chat, if you want to come into the chat and call me a Yahtzee, knock yourselves out. See how much it hurts my feelings. 0. I'd be much more offended if you called me a communist. Much more offended. And I wouldn't be offended by that. I'd just be like, yeah, F you, whatever. You know, especially if you're a Canadian calling me a communist, I'm just going to be like, really, dude? Really? You know, point of order. I've got this colored card that says that I'm like something, so you got to let me talk now. Point of privilege. Of course, I can't just make fun of the Canadians for that because we did that shit in America a couple of years back. Fucking cringe with all this point of order. I'm a trans identifying black First Nations, whatever, whatever. So I should get to speak before that guy over there because they're not whatever that I mean, comrades, we have to keep the talk down. You okay, guys? And then the very next point of order, this is the American one. Point of order, do not use gendered language. God, if I was in that room, I'd just I mean, people like that too dumb to be allowed. I mean, they're all just waiting to earn a Darwin Award, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. But yeah, it is a joke when you hear somebody say point of order. Who do you think you are? Point of order. It was funny, one guy getting up in front of the Canadian Madame, but she didn't want to be called Madame. And because she's non-binary, even though it's obvious she's a woman with a, Austrian painter haircut. And then some dude gets up there and starts arguing against feminism because we went to war in Afghanistan for feminist reasons or some shit. And I'm just like, the whole meeting, the Canadian, like National Democratic, whatever meeting, the whole meeting was just people getting up in front of the microphone to bitch about whatever someone that had went before them had done or said, and they're like, point of privilege. The guy that come up here last time was a white guy and I was waiting and I'm black identifying. So I want to complain about that. And then they talk about, and then the next guy get up, point of privilege. The black person that talked isn't a First Nations gay person. So I should have been the one to talk when they talked. And that shit went on and on. It went on so much that there's a picture of a dude literally crashed out on the table, like mouth full open, just, just knocked out. And it's just like, yeah, man. Things in the Great White North sure have changed since the late 80s when I used to drive up to Windsor. But I talk about that with a lot of nostalgia back then. Drive to Windsor. Everything was so cheap compared to America. The beer was better. The nudie bars, not that I'd go to nudie bars now, but back then I would, were full nude, no little patches or any of that shit. It was full on. And I could sit at the bar next to 12 Canadians and they'd all be just the nicest people ever. Just, they knew I was American. You hear me talk, this guy's from America, from the South somewhere, right? So they knew exactly where I was from. No issues ever. No issues ever. It was Canada back then. I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you were a 20-something-year-old kid, 18 to 20-something, in the late 80s, Canada was better than Disney World. You just cross over. My sister lived in Lincoln Park, which is a suburb of Detroit. You just cross over the bridge, show them the ID, get in there, and it's like, all right, let's get some donuts and beer and big cans and freaking go look at some coochies and, have a great time hanging out, and yeah, I'm really sad that it's not that way anymore, honestly. I have always considered Canadians to be honorary Americans, really. And I've always kind of considered us to be honorary Canadians. I mean, we're brothers. We come from the same place, come from the same exact place. But right now, we're just not getting along. But who knows? Sometime in the future, cooler heads will prevail. And then we'll be back to being buddies again. But yeah, Coco, I don't expect you to defend Bear. I don't expect anyone to defend Bear. I've said this multiple times. I don't know if you've heard it, but I'll say it, and I'll say it to Bear if I talk to him again, because I did talk to him on Discord a little bit. Bear is invited at any time to hang out at my show. And if Mobius and Bear want to fight, I'm not getting in the middle of them. And I refuse to block anybody. I just really wish that the two of them, as brother Canadians could get over whatever they're doing, because I don't even really know what the fight's about, and we could all just hang out. Because, like I said, some of the best times I've ever had on this channel. Bo, what's up, my fellow nerd? I'm painting miniatures. But I'm getting ready to end this game because my game is getting ready to start. So I'm getting ready to end the live stream. But I was just talking about Bear. Yeah. Bear has a permanent 100%, no questions asked, invitation to come on here and talk all the shit he wants. As long as, and this is just me being paranoid, he understands that I'm still going to call the Eskimo and Hyperborea Eskimos. I'm not going to call them First Nations or whatever the hell. In the Hyperborea book, they're called Eskimos. In the Clark Ashton Smith Hyperborean Chronicles, they're called Eskimos. They call themselves Eskimos. So I will also be calling them Eskimos. But I don't even know if that pissed Bear off or if I just thought it did, because I'm paranoid. And I always think I did something wrong when people get mad, even when maybe I didn't. Right? I am getting ready to get up off my ass, though, and run this for the next 4 to 5 hours. The group is here. They're just waiting on me to call them to the table. But you know how the reason I haven't quit quite yet is because when they all show up, they have to spend half an hour gossiping out on. We've got a Florida room, which is, just a screen back porch. And so they all go out there to gossip a little bit about whatever the fuck's been going on during the week. And once they've gossiped enough, we can actually settle down and start gaming. I'm sure those of you who run like in-person games know exactly what I'm talking about. The players show up and they're all amped up, drinking their Mountain Dews and their Monster Energy drinks. And they got to talk about whatever happened at work and whose girlfriend did what to who. It's just, I used to like yell at them and be like, when you show up here, sit down at the table, we are starting. Yeah, look who won. Not me. I didn't win that argument because honestly, I couldn't stop them. And even though my players trust and respect me, and typically will do whatever I ask them to do, that's the one thing they won't do. They won't shut the fuck up. They just won't. They got to talk shit. They just have to. And yeah. And like I've told you guys a lot of times, overall, I am a go with the flow kind of guy. So I am not going to fight these guys because they want to sit on a porch and gossip about what's going on with who. Oh, see, I hear them coming in. So, yeah. If they're coming in, that means they might be done with the bullshit. Bo, you and I need to hang out one of these times and talk some shit. Yeah, I'm late, man. The game was supposed to start 15 minutes ago. But yeah, Bo, we need to hang out and talk painting and shit one of these days. I've been painting a ton of Battletech figures lately, but also a bunch of like just, adventurers and stuff too. So. But everybody, thank you for hanging out. Those of you who made it the whole way with me, two or three thanks for you. You guys go up a level. And with Misa, do svidaniya. And if you have never read anything about Hyperborea, but you like role-playing games, for the love of God, check it out. I've never had more fun running a game. My players like the game. It's a good game. And it's weird. It's got all that H.P. Lovecraft, R.E. Howard goodness, and a very much improved AD&D style rule system, and a weird world. So by all means, guys, check it out. But, or don't. But yeah, like I said, peace and love to all of you wherever you are, whether you're up in the Great White North, and I'm jealous because I hate sweating my ass off down here, or whether you're across the sea in the motherland, uh, you know, Rodinia. Um, I think about you guys, and I like all of you, you know. And to quote a really wise dude from, I guess, back in the late '80s in America, can't we all just get along?